There was a study done by a researcher named Elizabeth Margaret, who her study was called Between Two Worlds, and it studied the impact that divorce had on children. And in close to 50% of cases, the child developed two different personalities because they had mom had one political persuasion, mom's a Republican, dad's a Democrat, mom's a Buddhist, dad's a Republican, or, a Christian. The screen limits over here are like 1 hour a day. There's unlimited screens over here. Dessert like this, diet like this,
my son was
cauliflower
a
crust
example.
over here. Yes. And kids have to transform to be a different person between dad's house and mom's house. And actually your situation was almost archetypal, where your child had to literally become a different person at mom's house
girl
and dad's
at mom's house, boy
That's
at dad's
exactly
house.
right. And that is what a split home does to you.
He never presented as a girl to me.
Yeah,
That's right.
I remember seeing the videos where you're asking your son, and he's like, "No, I don't want to do that."
Yeah, you cannot split your child into two different homes. They develop two different lives and two different personalities.
Wow.
That's why I'm cool. I agree with you. I mean, I'm fine with forcing parents simply to stay together and raise their kids till they're 18. I'm sorry. You just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that
that's the laws I would like to see. The old Roman laws around marriage.
This is the interesting thing about the rights of the child. If the parents are fighting and it's bad, not to the point of abuse, but screaming, I think they should be reprimanded by the court, saying you are obligated to stop and you have to tone it down because this is for the kids.
Yeah.
So we don't want children growing up in an environment where parents are just screaming at each other 24/7.
Yeah.
And so the
but you punish the parents for that, not the kids.
That's what I'm saying.
You're hired, dude. You're totally hired.
Here's an interesting thing about the rights of children, right? We often hear from the modern day left establishment narratives that children have a right to just insert and you name it.
Yeah, to having their transgender identity hidden from their parents. They have a right to testosterone from Planned Parenthood.
But my view is it's more so a right to your parents acting responsibly to protect you.
Okay, that's where I agree.
Meaning the child can't decide he wants to eat ice cream. That it is a violation of the rights of the child for a parent to just give them 3 gallons of ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yes, it is.
So here's the thing, I have a children's rights nonprofit, and that is the right word for it. The reality is that children's right to their own mother and father, it actually might be too weak of a term. They have such a claim to their own parents that there really is very little language we could use to describe the strength of that claim. Okay, so I understand that rights is
the most
disputed.
fundamental human thing.
It is literally one of the most universal
all
human longings.
Law and all human civilization is based on that one thing.
That's right. And so children have a right to be known and loved by their mother and father. They have a right to life. They have a right to an intact body, an unmedicalized body. Yeah. They have a right to innocence. It is the duty of parents to protect those rights.
I love that you're talking about duties.
Well, they go together. In natural law theory, rights and duties are two sides of the same
That's
coin.
Correct.
Okay. So you're exactly right, Tim, that there's a lot of momentum on the right when it comes to parental rights, and that's good. But parental rights has limits. You do not have a right to chemically sterilize your child just because you think I'm the parent, I can do what I want. So I think parental rights are important, but insufficient when it comes to child protection. That is why I use the language of children's rights. Because just because an adult wants to do something like take their kid to drag queen story hour, you don't have a parental right to corrupt your child's mind through these sexualizing programs.
I just want to point out what really bothers me is that it is a crime in, I don't know if I can say most, but I can tell you that in many jurisdictions, because I've actually looked at the laws, it is outright illegal to bring a child to a drag show.
Yes.
And the police just don't do anything about it.
They just don't do anything about it. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the DAs don't do anything about it. The DAs could also get involved. Sheriffs could get involved.
Yep.
We have sheriffs that just tolerate this stuff. In my county, that's in Texas, where I used to live, was definitely not the case. The sheriff would not allow it, and it just shut it down. But here's the danger. Everything has pluses and minuses, right? The world's not, a black and white. The danger of children's rights is what we see in the family courts today, where unfortunately we live in a decadent society. That's true. I mean that in the Latin sense,
right?
Decadenced, out of step with one another. There's no general agreement on what constitutes what's, good for a child in many circumstances. So the notion of children's rights could be used in such a way as to force parents in California to transition their children. And it is actually being used that way.
Well, properly defining rights is important. It's very much like The Incredibles. If everything is a right, nothing is a right. You do have to properly define what children's rights are.
And you want to give the widest scope to parenting, right? Because we recognize that geographical and cultural conditions, even in America, are not identical.
Even just personality differences with kids.
Yeah, you literally couldn't. Well, yeah, like my two sons. Did I ever tell you the story about how I figured out their personality differences?
No, but I want to hear it because I love this kind of thing.
So I couldn't understand modern cartoons. Like I just don't even get them. I can't even follow the plot. So I got the old Johnny Quest cartoons, because like they have real guns and people don't get up when you shoot them and stuff, And so we were watching The Invisible Monster, which I guess is one of the more popular ones for the cartoon aficionados. And James was saying, look at that monster. He's huge. He's going to outrun Bandit, and Bandit can't get away, but Johnny's going to try, And Jude was going, Bandit's scared. That monster. Why is that monster so angry? So I just realized, it just hit me, like Jude was living the inner life of these characters, and James was living the outer life. And at that moment, I raised them completely different ways. Yeah. My way of motivating them and disciplining them was never the same after that.
Well, this is why God did not say, do this with every single kid.
Right.
God gave every kid a mother and a father who studies them, knows them, and is ultimately invested in them and can tailor make their parenting approach based on what the child needs.
Here's the test.
Okay.
When they're old enough, you have them play Fallout 3.
Yes.
Or maybe Skyrim.
You're not going
I
to
need a bingo card. Like, how many times are we going to get to like the video game references?
But it's because
he's not going to give me Fallout 4.
In not Fallout 4. But because the reason I bring these games up is that in these games you have a list of abilities that your character can improve upon every time you level up.
Right.
When I first played Fallout 3, I was introduced to it from a friend who was a Marine.
Okay.
His character was all about strength and big guns.
Right.
And I would watch him go into, the bad guy area, and he would have a minigun and just run and go and just mow everyone down.
Right.
And then I was like, this game looks crazy. I don't know if I want to play it. It's not really. He's like, well, just try it. I'm going to work. Yeah. I played it. My character was a sniper who snuck around and had lock picking and computer hacking. And so
you play like I do. Yeah.
My view of the game was, I don't want any conflict. Anything that would be conflict, I will win before it occurs, and I will avoid it.
Yeah.
And my buddy, who's quite literally like the hoorah mindset, built a character around charging in head first and using pure strength to shut down the conflict. And I thought that was really interesting to see.
Yeah.
Because I knew that between our personalities.
Sure.
That mine was more strategic and staying back, and his was more head on. You could see the personalities of the individual in how they choose their character to be. So it doesn't literally need to be a video game like Fallout.
No, I've even seen it in my own sons with like board games. So Jude never loses board games ever. Like he beats me and everybody else all the time. And the reason is very simple. My son James and Jude, they learned how to play chess like before first grade.
And good dad.
And they were James could solve like 3-move problems.
Wow.
Jude could solve like 1-move problems, but Jude doesn't play the rules. Jude plays the person. And he's like, he's very comfortable in these kinds of positions, and he would put you in positions where you were uncomfortable and beat the crap out of you.
You got to teach him poker.
Good
right?
for him.
He plays Monopoly the same way. He's like, I know Dad always goes for the expensive properties, right? So I'm going to lay traps for him by buying properties in little areas because Jude actually found out the dice probabilities and said, okay, if he wants to land on those spots, where would he be likely to be able to land on the move before that?
Good for him. Good for him.
He plays the person.
That's clever.
Right? Whereas, and I think that's why James had trouble with Jude as a boxer. I mean, James is more athletic than Jude, but Jude would play with James's psychology and get him into positions where Jude could whack him in boxing. So this is really important. So we grant that parents need this latitude, right? So I think absent abuse and neglect, which are really just two spectrums of the same thing, right? Abuse and neglect. Absent abuse and neglect, what we should be talking about is parental rights.
Once you clearly define what abuse and neglect is, right? I mean, so it's abusive.
There's no general agreement in our society. It's one of the problems that we have, right?
And that's what I'm going to do.
California.
I'm going to tell everybody what children's rights are.
California has a totally different idea of what child abuse is than Texas.
They're wrong, and they need to adopt my definition.
So
I agree.
Thanks.
I don't know if this is too hard of a segue.
I'm moving there. I'll help you.
But one thing we've discussed quite a bit on Timcast IRL is abortion. Colorado has no limit. Oklahoma has a pure ban. How can we as a country function when the view of human rights is spattered and different across all the different states, right? Typically, We have a general view of your rights. We have the Constitution at the federal level, which supersedes all the states. It's the law of the land. But now we're running into this issue where the argument from the political left is it doesn't matter if you've gestated 9 months and can survive on your own. If you are in the womb, you have no rights at all and can be terminated if the woman desires. And then you have other states that say, like, actually, from the point of conception, you are a human with human rights. I mean, this is a bifurcation in the view of rights. I don't know how we navigate.
So ultimately, all the culture war issues that we're coming up with today have at their root the same question, and that is, what does it mean to be human?
Yes.
Okay, these are ultimately philosophical questions.
Yes.
And hey, I'm going to look at the camera for the first time. Hey, Christian theologian, you need to get to work on this, because we need a robust defense of the human person, because we cannot fight back made in Canada, like medical assistance in dying. We're not going to be able to talk about proper understanding of children's rights to their mother and father. We're not going to be able to look at reproductive technologies the way we should, transhumanism, pornography, the redefinition of marriage, transging the kids. Every single thing that we are talking about today comes down to the question, what does it mean to be human? Christian theologian, you are the only person with a worldview who is able to answer that. You're the only person with the scaffolding to be able to give a human dignifying response to that. So that is what we need. That is the urgency here, okay? And the problem with abortion, well, there's so many problems with abortion, but I will say that the reason why we have children being manufactured through big fertility, using somebody else's sperm, somebody else's egg, somebody else's womb, is because we have said children exist for us. We don't exist for them. And that began with abortion. That actually probably began with birth control. Yeah. I'm going to control this situation. They only come if I welcome them and if I decide. Instead of saying, you know what, sex leads to parenting. If I have sex, I am consenting to welcoming a child into my life. So we have always been controlling reproduction. Birth control was the first step. Abortion is the second step. We've now taken that into reproductive technologies.
I think